Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
Alright, so I gotta talk about this Graham Platner stuff. If you don't know, Graham Platner is a candidate for Senate in Maine. He's currently running in the Democratic primary. In the general, it's going to be against Susan Collins. So he's the sort of left populist candidate in that race, running on things like Medicare for all, general agitation against the system, not taking corporate money, talking about the housing crisis, talking about the healthcare crisis, and all sorts of other things like that from a pretty tangible leftist perspective. Recently, an establishment Democrat has decided to hop into the race, Janet Mills, and ever since she did that, the entire dynamic of the race has changed in a pretty deliberate way. Platner had a lot of momentum. He had an endorsement from Bernie Sanders and was looking like a pretty solid candidate, despite the fact that there were some question marks in his background, which I'm going to talk about here. But the moment Janet Mills got in the race, all this oppo research suddenly dropped about old posts on Reddit, things about him saying he's a communist, things people are calling racist, using words he shouldn't use, blah, blah, blah. Typical dig through the internet archives type of stuff. It's like, you know, we could sit here and quibble about his Reddit comments if we want to, but I don't really want to. But as of the 21st, there was another piece of oppo research that was actually dropped by Platner's campaign. They sent it to Pod Save America, and Platner was interviewed on Pod Save America by Jon Favreau about not just the Reddit posts, but also this video that depicts him shirtless, and you can see what is pretty well recognized as a Nazi tattoo. Not the most widely recognized Nazi symbol, and I have seen it used in places that are not directly associated with Nazis or similar symbols. But this particular symbol is banned in a lot of places in Europe and in Germany. It's definitely a known Nazi symbol. And he got this tattooed on himself when he was in the military, says he didn't know, and has had it on ever since. And it never came up. So real quick, let me play for you his explanation of this tattoo that he has. And then more so what I want to get into later is his military background, his background working for military contractors, because to the extent that there's something suspicious about this guy, that's where it is. It's not that he has some kind of like gang tattoo affiliation. As of right now, that's not what we're talking about here. But there are some genuine question marks in this guy's background, and that's what I want to get to mostly. So here's what he had to say about the tattoo.
Yes, so in 2007, I was a machine gun section leader with Kilo Company, 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines. We were on the 2-2 Mu, and it was my third deployment. My previous two had been to Fallujah and then Ramadi, 2006. And we went ashore in Split, Croatia, myself and a few of the other machine gun squad leaders, and we got very inebriated. And we did what Marines on liberty do, and we decided to go get a tattoo. And we went to a tattoo parlor in Split, Croatia, and we chose a terrifying looking skull and crossbones off the wall because we were Marines, and, you know, skulls and crossbones are a pretty standard military thing. And we got those tattoos, and then we all moved on with our lives. And I actually joined the Army after that, where I had to go to MEPS. I got screened. Later on, I got a security clearance and a full screen when I went to work for the State Department as a contractor doing security for the ambassador to Afghanistan.
All right, yeah. So like I said, I mean, this is a widely known Nazi symbol. His story about getting it in Croatia, just picking it off the wall and getting it tattooed on him, isn't the most outlandish thing. It is possible that you would find a tattoo like that on the wall of a tattoo parlor in that part of the world. I'm very skeptical of the idea that he never recognized this. This isn't just like a guy who's from the working class who wants to do better for America. This dude was on Reddit calling himself a communist and talking about like the overthrow of capitalism and shit. And he never saw that symbol. He doesn't recognize that symbol. I just don't really buy that. It's weird. The thing that Platner has going for him is he comes off as a very honest guy. But That's a weird fucking tattoo. And when I first heard about this, the main thing that I wanted to know is more details about his military and military contractor background, because I already knew about that, and to me that was the biggest question mark about him. That was the thing that made me say this guy is suspect, because when you come from that world, from that type of background, not just military, not just Marines, but, you know, private military contractors after the fact, especially in positions of leadership, high up positions in these entities, that's when you start developing relationships within what is known as the deep state. And I'm not going to go full conspiracy brain on you guys, but I am going to try to describe exactly what makes this sound so sketchy to people and why. He touches on a little bit in this next part. And like I said, his relationship with the military and with different contractors associated with that, as well as his experience doing that, to me, that's where I feel like something suspect could be going on. And this tattoo definitely only adds to that. So this is him going over his military history. This is a lot kind of bunched together here because I wanted to get the whole story. If you want to hear him tell this whole thing, you should go watch the original interview, but all the main beats of the story I did condense down here. So listen to that real quick.
Yeah, I joined up in 2004. I was 19, and I joined the infantry. I wanted to fight. I wanted to be a soldier since the day, as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a soldier. I joined the Marine Corps because the Marine Corps had the reputation as being the Marine Corps. I mean, if you want to fight, then you join the infantry, and you join the that's everybody knows Marine Corps combat infantry. That's where the action is. Came back, was home for 5 months, and we redeployed to Ramadi in I believe it was February of 2006, February or March, and then I spent 8 months in Ramadi. And that was the most intense of my deployments, hands down. Ramadi 2006 was
that was
wildly violent,
notoriously horrifying time there, right?
Yeah, and I was a Kilo company, the company I was with. We were tasked with the defense of the government center, which was the capital building of Al Anbar province. So essentially, anybody that had a grievance with the occupation came on down to the Gov Center and expressed your unhappiness, generally with RPGs or mortar rounds or direct fire. So the civilians in the city suffered immensely from, frankly, just being in the middle of all of it. It was hard. Couldn't re-enlist into the Marine Corps because of my sleeve tattoos. Went to the Army. Army doesn't care about tattoos below your or showing on your forearms. And so I joined the Army as an 11 Bravo and infantry as well. And went to a long-range surveillance company and became a reconnaissance and surveillance team leader. And then deployed to Afghanistan in 2010, 2011. The big issue was that I had felt we were doing things wrong. I believed in COIN. I believed in counterinsurgency doctrine. I really thought that there was this kind of like intellectual way of fighting the war where we were going to connect with civilians, we were going to build relationships. And at this point, I'm going back because I think that we've learned the lessons. I'm hearing all the words from the General Petraeus
right.
And General Mattis have written the counterinsurgency manual. And it's all right. I'm reading it all. I'm like, oh yeah, this is what we're doing. And then I went to Afghanistan and we were doing the exact same bullshit. We called it different things. We used different words. It was the same bullshit. It was just metrics. It was like, how much money did we spend? How many people did we kill? How many buildings did we build, even if they're now empty and nobody's using them? It was like nobody ever asked, like, how much better off are the Afghans in this part of Afghanistan than when you got here? Well, I will just say this too. I went back in 2018, but now I'm on the ambassador security detail. And now I'm like seeing things from the higher level. I mean, last time I was there, I was an infantry sergeant, right? And now I'm here like interacting with the NATO leadership, US military leadership, the diplomatic leadership, the UN leadership. Nothing had changed. 7 years, nothing had changed. No new ideas. The only thing that it was happening was we were expending an immense amount of taxpayer money on all of these projects, including like the contract I was on. I lasted about 6 months. I quit that job I quit in July of 2018. I could not be engaged with the system anymore. I was fully checked out. And then I went back to Maine, I bought a boat, I got into oyster farming, and I essentially never looked back until now, quite frankly.
All right, so look, my main take on this guy, I liked him before. I think to the extent that I talked about him on this platform, it was pretty positive. And listening to this interview, it's like, this is a dude I want to like. But if I'm being really honest with you, he's blinking. He's a blinking red light. And there are some definite signs that he could be affiliated with the type of entities that would do some kind of infiltration operation. And I know that there's every reason in the world to write that off and say, oh, that's ridiculous, and how could it be this guy and that guy? And in general, I would agree. I don't like to go to that type of theorizing. I said it about Dan Bongino when he was selected to work under Kash Patel in the FBI. And the reason why was because he had a history working in the Secret Service and intelligence. And then he went out to become this leading prominent voice on the Epstein files and like anti-feds, blah, blah, blah. Then he gets folded into the government. And what do we hear from him? He makes some interesting noises that seemed like he was making a ruckus, but then he shut up. And that was probably only in response to the fact that the base was asking questions. So I don't know if that's evidence of my theory of Dan Bongino or evidence against it. And the reality is, when you have federal agents meddling in things, that's what it looks like. It looks very confusing. It's not straightforward. It's purposely meant to not be straightforward. And in a lot of ways, Graham Platner's story about being in the military, all these tours he did, finding out that all of the destruction and stuff that they had him do was for nothing and ended up just being a way for private companies to profit, all of that kind of checks out to me. It's what I would want somebody to be saying who's running as a leftist who came from that type of background. Because you allow that experience to radicalize you, and then you become a weapon against that system. But a couple things he says here. He says he was a reconnaissance and surveillance team leader, and he says that he was a believer in COIN, which means counterinsurgency. That's the idea of sort of running interference against radical movements, revolutionary movements. And in America, that was folded into the program COINTEL, which means counterintelligence. And so this is the kind of thing that he's being accused of being, right? An infiltrator, somebody who is doing that type of operation. So the fact that he has very high level experience doing exactly that is a huge blinking red light. And like I said, what he has to say about the military, how it all works, the cynicism of it, in some ways it checks out. But what I'm not really hearing, he's not really tying the experience in counterintelligence and counterinsurgency into what he's saying and into this situation, frankly. Because it seems like that analysis should play a part in this leftist strategy of yours. And it's not inconceivable that somebody would be some kind of infiltrator with the purpose of, entering a movement that is gaining momentum. It's really not hard to figure out what it is that leftists want you to say to start supporting you. John Fetterman did it. Kristen Sinema did it. It's been done. It's a strategy that actually kind of works. And the way these operations take place, I think people should get this image out of their head of like a super intricately planned 15-year, okay, here's what you're going to do, Graham Platner. In 2016, Trump's going to win president the first time. Then you're going to go work for BlackRock. Then you're going to come back. You're going to do a bunch of Reddit posts. That's not how this works. What it would be is relationships. The thing that's sketchy about Graham Platner is in doing these tours that he was doing, he definitely built certain relationships in that world. And then when you go on, you run as a leftist candidate, all of a sudden you're in power and you have people that are connected to the system that want favors from you, or maybe have leverage over you to extract favors from you. And that's exactly what happened with John Fetterman. He was pro-Israel before he got elected in. He just ran on different issues. The focus wasn't there at the time. And then, come to find out, in power, that's his number one priority, is to make sure that the interests of Israel are protected. And he's the only Democrat often that votes with Republicans when it comes to issues of military and war. And this is a guy who ran a progressive campaign. So, I mean, the risk of infiltration is there. And to the extent that those indications can be detected, Graham Platner is blinking. And so all I have to say about this, is it the end of his campaign? I don't know. Like I said, I think the background in military and the Fed vibes of it all, I think that's really what makes it worse. And that is what is going to kill his credibility with the nationwide left. And the reality is, to do what he's trying to do, he needs that cohort of people. Because in order to be lifted up as a local progressive candidate the way he needs to be, you need to have that base of support from, nationwide and even worldwide. And it's an advantage that we have over the corporations and the PACs, is that we have people power. And so even if it's a local election, we can still target a lot of attention there. Graham Platner was benefiting from that. This is going to hurt that. He's going to keep running. And what he needs to do, in my opinion, is continue fleshing out this idea of what he was doing overseas in these tours becoming the radical ideology that he now uses. Because there is something to be said for that. And I don't see how he's going to be able to recover credibility with that base of people, even in Maine, let alone, across this sort of internet network of leftists. And that's one of the only places that the online left has any power at all, is the ability to lift up these local candidates in a way that other local candidates are not being lifted up. It doesn't mean you're going to win the election, but it is a benefit. It is an advantage. So this primary doesn't happen until next year, next June. Almost a year until this primary happens. And that's a good thing. And the people who are tempted to say, oh, you're turning around, you're turning on your fellow leftists, this is why leftists can't win. This is actually okay. This is fine. This happened at the right time. If this was 3 months before the election, it would be much harder to navigate this situation, both for Graham Platner, but also for people that need to decide whether they're going to support him or not. Bernie has held firm in his endorsement of him, kind of not buying into the idea that this tattoo is a big deal. But when it comes to, like I said, the chatter online, even amongst some people who are, just trying to rabble rouse, but also amongst honest people who don't want to let candidates into the movement that have Nazi tattoos, people are going to keep talking about this. And so I think if within a couple months Graham Platner can't recover the narrative and redirect things in a way that makes all these weird aspects of him make more sense. He said he's going to get the tattoo removed. But like I said, unless he's able to find a way to flesh out the story, to tie it into this left-wing ideology that he's running on better, I just don't think it's going to work. But the reality is, there's time. DSA should run somebody else in that race. I don't know how possible that is. It's Maine, but somebody else can run. And I think that that's probably the best shot at this point of recovering the leftist momentum in that race. Because, it looks bad. And he's going to have to do some really genius political communicating in order to recover that lost ground. And I think we're probably better off, trying to transfer that momentum to somebody else. And there is time to do that. And if DSA puts up a better candidate than that, then the right thing for Graham Platner to do in that situation would be to drop out and allow that person to have more momentum. So we'll see. I'm going to keep an eye on this race. And like I said, I don't think Graham Platner is dead in the water. There's still some people who are behind him. There's some people who are taking the stance of, we need to not throw people out, and we need to have a party that's open to people making mistakes and things that look bad in a minute way. And in general, I agree with that when it comes to these candidates. However, tattoos and affiliations with these high-level government organizations that are doing counterinsurgency programs and then trying to present yourself as a leftist insurgent of sorts is suspect. And I would venture as far as to say maybe we don't need somebody like that in the movement unless they can make a really good case for why they are the right person. And that's where I think Graham Platner has some room to do so. But, he's going to have to tie in his history doing counterinsurgency and counterintelligence into his pitch for being a leader of a leftist movement. And I think that's going to be a difficult thing to do. Pressure getting pressed, do you feel it now? What even happens next, I don't really know. Voice carries less, can you hear me now? Soon as I get blessed, time's running out. Pressure getting pressed. Pressure getting pressed. Feel the pressure getting pressed. Yeah. Pressure, do you feel it now? I'm just saying this.